The door wasn't locked. That's the part I still think about. 3 years later, standing in a courtroom with her diary in an evidence bag and her lawyer reading my name off a restraining order I never saw coming. "Exhibit 14, he said, holding it up. "Mr. Nasir's unauthorized entry." I wanted to scream. The door wasn't locked because she wanted me to open it. But I'm getting ahead. Let me take you back to the apartment on Clifton Road. The week everything started. The week I moved into 4B and she was already in 4A. And the building manager handed me my keys and said, "Your neighbor's quiet. You'll barely know she's there." He was wrong about that. Her name was Alara Mirza, and the first thing I knew about her was the smell of lavender soap in the hallway every morning at 6. The second thing was her voice. Low, unhurried, the kind you lean into without meaning to. She was on the phone the first time I saw her, leaning against the shared balcony railing, saying, "No, Baba, I told you. The paperwork is filed. It's done." She saw me and didn't flinch. Just pressed the phone against her collarbone, looked at me the way you look at someone whose face you've been expecting, and said, "You must be 4B. "Samir," I said. "Alara, your mail got mixed with mine." She handed me 3 envelopes without looking at them. "Your bank thinks your name is Nasir. You might want to fix that." I stood there holding my misspelled life, and she went back to her call, and I thought, she's the most organized person I've ever met. That should have been the warning. The building was a converted textile warehouse in the old city. High ceilings, exposed pipes, thin walls. You could hear a cough, a kettle, a phone, vibrating against a nightstand. And Alara was not quiet. She was precise. I could set my clock by her, kettle at 6:05, heels on hardwood by 6:40, door latch at 6:55, the fading percussion of her walk down the corridor. I started waking at 6 without an alarm. Within 2 weeks I knew she was a corporate auditor. She reviewed financial disclosures for an investment firm, Caspian Capital, and she carried a leather satchel that weighed more than some children. I knew she took her tea with cardamom and no sugar. I knew she'd been engaged once and wasn't anymore, because her mother's voice carried through the wall. "But what will people say, Alara?" And Alara's response was always the same flat silence. What I didn't know, what it would take me 5 months to learn and a courtroom to prove, was that Alara was not auditing Caspian Capital. She was building a case against them. And I had been selected as her alibi before I ever unpacked my books. The hallway encounters became coffee. Coffee became dinner, just once, she said. Once became Wednesdays. I cooked, she brought wine and arrived exactly on time. She had this way of listening that made you confess things you'd never said. I told her about my father's printing press that went bankrupt, the debt I was still paying at 31, the manuscript on my laptop I hadn't opened in 4 months. She nodded like she was filing each piece into a cabinet only she could see. "You're careful with money," she said. "Not a question. I'm broke," I said. "Careful sounds nicer." She smiled. "Careful is useful. Broke people notice when numbers don't add up." I didn't hear the recruitment in that sentence. I heard a woman validating the worst thing about my life, and I leaned closer, and the gap between 4A and 4B shrank to the width of a shared wall I pressed my hand against some nights, wondering if she was awake on the other side. The door thing happened on a Tuesday. I came home early, my editing shift had been canceled, and I heard music from her apartment. Something slow and Arabic. A woman's voice stretching vowels into prayer. Her door was open by 3 inches, not ajar from carelessness. Open, the hallway light cut a stripe into her room. I knocked. The music covered it. I pushed the door because I thought something was wrong. She never left it open, and I saw her standing by the window in the late light, half-dressed. a blouse held in one hand, her back bare, and she turned and looked at me and smiled like she knew. Not startled, not angry, not embarrassed. She looked at me the way someone looks at a chess piece that just moved to the exact square they needed. "Sorry," I said. "The door was open," she finished. "I know." She pulled the blouse on slowly, watching me. "You're home early. Shift got canceled." "Good." She buttoned the blouse from the bottom, still watching. "I need your help with something." She sat me at her kitchen table and opened her laptop and showed me a spreadsheet, columns of wire transfers from Caspian Capital to a shell company in the Caymans. 14 transactions over 11 months, each just under the reporting threshold. "I found this during an audit," she said, "but I can't flag it internally. My supervising partner is the signatory on 3 of these wires." "Who's your supervising partner?" "Tariq Jilani." The name didn't mean anything to me then. Within 3 months, it would mean everything. "What do you need from me?" She looked at me with those dark, cataloging eyes, someone who notices when numbers don't add up. She'd said that line before, at dinner, casually, like a compliment. Now I heard it again, and the echo was too precise to be accident. But her hand was warm when it covered mine on the table, and I chose the warmth over the warning, the way you always do when you're already halfway to falling. For 3 weeks I helped her cross-reference wire transfers against Caspian's public filings. We worked at her kitchen table after 9, laptops open, her legs sometimes pressing mine under the table in a way that could have been space constraint and could have been invitation. I didn't ask which. I was afraid the answer would end the contact. What I didn't know, she was copying the metadata from my laptop. My timestamps, my IP address, my login signature embedded in every file I opened. If the case went wrong, the digital trail led to me first. The first reveal came the morning after the night she kissed me. It was a real kiss, at least. The biology of it was real. Breath, teeth, her hand in my hair, the wall of the hallway cold against my back. She tasted like cardamom. I walked into my apartment reeling, checked my phone, and found a notification from my bank. Someone had added a new authorized user to my savings account. Authorization timestamp 11:47 p.m., the exact minute her mouth was on mine. I stared at the screen, told myself it was a glitch, a bank error, because the alternative, that she'd taken my phone from my back pocket while her hand was in my hair, was a thought I wasn't ready to have about the woman I was falling for. I deleted the notification. That was the most expensive mistake I've ever made. Tariq Jilani sent me a message on a Wednesday. I'd never contacted him. He should not have had my number. The message said, "I know what you and Miss Mirza are compiling. If any of it surfaces, I will personally ensure your outstanding debts are called in full. All of them, including the ones your father left. My father's debts were in my name. Co-signed at 19, before I understood what a personal guarantee meant. If they were called, I'd lose the apartment, the freelance contracts, everything. I'd be back in my parents' house at 31 with nothing." I showed Alara the message. She read it twice, then said, calmly, "He's bluffing. How does he have my number?" "Tariq collects information. It's what he does. He knows about us, about the spreadsheets. He knows what I want him to know." She looked at me. "Samir, do you trust me?" I said yes, but I noticed she hadn't explained how Tariq knew about me. She'd redirected, the way an auditor redirects an inquiry away from the column that doesn't balance. 2 days later, Tariq showed up at my office. Not Caspian Capital's office, my freelance editing space, a shared desk in a co-working building. He was shorter than I expected. Neat gray suit. A face built for depositions. Patient. Amused. Certain. He sat in the chair across from my desk without asking and placed a manila folder between us. "Mr. Nasser," he said, "I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to show you something." The folder contained 12 months of communication logs between Alara and the Financial Crimes Bureau. She'd been feeding them information since before I moved in. The reports were time-stamped. The earliest was dated 3 weeks before the building manager handed me my keys. "She requested you as a tenant," Tariq said, watching my face. "She asked the building manager specifically for someone in financial distress, someone whose digital footprint would be easy to borrow, and whose motive, if it came to a trial, would be obvious." He let that land. "You're not her partner, Miss Nasir. You're her cover." He stood, straightened his cuffs. "I don't want to destroy you. I want to stop her. Those are different things. Think about that." He left the folder. I went home and stood outside 4A for 11 minutes. I know because I watched the numbers on my phone. 11 minutes of staring at her door, the lavender leaking under it, the muffled sound of her typing. Then I knocked. She opened it, smiling. The smile died when she saw the folder. "Where did you get that?" He came to my office, sat in my chair, told me I'm your cover. She stared at the folder like it was a living thing. Then she sat on the edge of her bed and said, very quietly, "You were never supposed to see that." So it's true. Parts of it. Which parts? I did request you as a tenant. I did need someone in debt. That part is true. She looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was controlled. The way a bridge is controlled when it's bearing weight it was not designed for. But I didn't plan to feel this. That part broke the operation. What operation? Tariq laundered 11 million through Caspian using shell entities linked to a defense contractor. 3 whistleblowers tried to report it. 2 were fired. 1 had a car accident that wasn't an accident. I went to the Bureau because the internal system was already captured. But the Bureau wanted a civilian witness, someone with no institutional ties, someone a jury would believe, and I was supposed to recruit one without telling them. You were supposed to use me. Yes. And the kiss was real. Her voice cracked on the word. That's the problem, Samir. The kiss was real and the bank access was real, and I can't make those 2 things live in the same sentence. And I've tried. I stood in her doorway and felt the floor tilt. The woman I was falling for had stolen my identity to build a federal case, and she was crying. And I still wanted to cross the room and hold her, and I hated myself for it. "You have 48 hours, I said. "Get my name off every document, every file, every metadata log. Or I go to Tariq's lawyers and I tell them everything." She wiped her eyes. "If you do that, he walks. 11 million, 3 ruined lives, 1 dead man. He walks. Then you have 48 hours to find another way." I closed the door. My hand was shaking. I went into my apartment and sat in the dark and didn't sleep. The clock was running. She didn't find another way. She found something worse. At 6 a.m. the next morning, my phone buzzed with a forwarded email chain. Alara to the Bureau, time-stamped 2 hours earlier. I am formally removing Samir Nasir as a civilian asset. All files containing his metadata have been quarantined. Please confirm deletion within 24 hours. Below it, the Bureau's reply. Confirmed. Deletion scheduled. Note: without the civilian corroboration, the evidentiary threshold for Jelani is no longer met. Recommend we close the file. She'd done what I asked, and in doing it, she'd killed her own case. I found her on the shared balcony at 7. tea in hand, dark circles under her eyes, looking out at the city like she was memorizing it. "You closed the file," I said. "You told me to. You could have fought me. Could have stalled. I could have." She sipped her tea. "But you asked me to choose, and I chose you over the case. That's not a strategy. That's just what happened." I stood beside her. Our arms didn't touch. The city hummed below, indifferent to both of us. "There's another way," I said. "But you won't like it. Tell me." I go back in, voluntarily, as a knowing participant, not a recruited asset. My name stays on the files because I put it there. No stolen metadata, no borrowed identity. I choose it. Which means in a courtroom, I'm not your victim, I'm your corroborating witness, and Tariq can't discredit me by calling me a puppet. She turned to me. "You understand what that means? If the case fails, you're exposed. Tariq calls the debts. You lose everything. I lost everything when you smiled at me through an open door. I just hadn't counted it yet." She set down her tea. Her hand found mine on the railing. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The next 4 weeks were the most dangerous of my life. Alara and I rebuilt the case file from scratch. My name on every document, voluntarily, with full knowledge. I re-signed the metadata logs. I wrote a witness statement. I opened a new account specifically for tracking the wire transfers, with my name as primary holder and a paper trail a jury could follow in 10 minutes. Tariq found out within a week. His response was immediate and surgical. First, a legal letter to my freelance clients, citing financial irregularities associated with my accounts, recommending they terminate their contracts. 3 of my 5 clients dropped me by Friday. Second, a visit from 2 men I'd never seen, who sat in a car outside the building for 3 consecutive nights. Headlights off, engine running. Not illegal, just visible, just enough. Third, and this was the one that nearly broke me, he contacted my mother, told her I was under investigation for financial fraud. She called me sobbing at midnight, asking what I'd done, asking why I couldn't just live a simple life, asking if I'd learned nothing from what happened to my father. I sat on the kitchen floor and listened to her cry and looked through the wall toward 4A. Where Alara was awake, I could see the light under my door from her side. And I thought, this is the cost. This is what the door opening was actually an invitation to. Alara came over at 1 a.m. She didn't knock. She used the key I'd given her, freely, this time, and she sat on the floor beside me and said, "We can still stop. You can still walk away. I won't blame you." He called my mother. "I know, I heard. She thinks I'm a criminal. She'll know the truth when this is over." When is it over? Thursday. The Bureau presents the file to the judge Thursday morning. If the judge authorizes the warrant, Tariq's accounts are frozen by noon. If the judge doesn't, she stopped. Then I'm the one holding the bag. Yes, Thursday, 4 days. The clock was down to 4 days, and Tariq knew it, and every hour between now and then was a chance for him to find one more way to dismantle us. On Tuesday, Tariq made his last move. He filed a restraining order against me, citing my unauthorized entry into Alara's apartment 5 months earlier, the night of the open door, the night she smiled like she knew. His lawyer had Alara's old incident logs from the Bureau, the ones where she documented my recruitment as a civilian asset, and he reframed them. In his filing, I wasn't recruited. I was obsessed. I'd let myself into her apartment uninvited. I'd inserted myself into her work. I'd accessed her financial files without consent. The filing landed on Wednesday morning, 24 hours before the Bureau's court date. If the restraining order was granted, I couldn't testify. If I couldn't testify, the civilian corroboration collapsed. The case died, and this time it stayed dead. Alara called me at 8 a.m. Her voice was the steadiest I'd ever heard it, which meant she was terrified. "He's using the door," she said. "The night you walked in. He's saying you broke in. The door was open. Can you prove it?" Silence. Then I remembered. The building had cameras. The old textile warehouse had been retrofitted with security cameras in the hallways, installed by the building manager 2 years ago after a break-in on the 3rd floor. Grainy, low resolution, but time-stamped. If the footage from that Tuesday still existed, it would show her door already open before I touched it. It would show her standing in frame, visible through the gap. It would prove the entry was not forced, not uninvited, not unauthorized. I called the building manager. He checked. The footage cycled every 6 months. That Tuesday was 5 months and 3 weeks ago. We had 1 week of margin. I was at the building manager's office in 14 minutes. He pulled the footage on a monitor that smelled like cigarettes and old wiring. And there it was, the door, open by 3 inches, the stripe of light from inside, and if you squinted, her silhouette, standing. "Waiting. I need a copy," I said. "I need a reason," he said. "It's for a court case. Tomorrow morning." He burned it to a USB drive and charged me 50 rupees for the blank. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No gallery, no drama, just fluorescent light and a judge who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Tariq's lawyer presented the restraining order first. He was good, polished. He painted me as a fixated loner who'd latched on to a professional woman and manufactured a conspiracy theory to justify my obsession. Then, Alara's bureau contact introduced the wire transfer file. 14 transactions. 3 shell companies. 1 dead whistleblower. 11 million diverted. And then my lawyer, a woman Alara had found, who worked for a civil liberties organization and took the case for free because she'd been tracking Caspian for 2 years, stood and played the hallway footage. The judge watched the door stand open for 90 seconds before I appeared in frame. Watched Alara's silhouette move into position by the window. Watched me knock, wait, then push the door that was already open. The respondent did not force entry, my lawyer said. The door was open. The complainant was visible and positioned in the subject's line of sight. The restraining order is based on a mischaracterization of a consensual interaction filed strategically to suppress testimony in a federal financial crimes case. Tariq's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. The restraining order was denied at 10:47 a.m. The warrant for Tariq Jilani's accounts was authorized at 11:15 a.m. His assets were frozen by noon. The case took another 8 months to wind through the system, but the outcome was sealed that Thursday. Tariq Jilani was charged with money laundering, obstruction, and conspiracy. The dead whistleblower's family filed a civil suit. Caspian Capital's board resigned. Alara was offered a position with the Bureau. Permanent, salaried, legitimate. She turned it down. Why? I asked. We were on the balcony again. Same railing, same city, different people. Because they wanted to use me the same way I used you. And I don't want to be that person twice. You didn't use me. I volunteered. You volunteered after I manipulated you into a position where volunteering felt like the only moral choice. That's what using someone looks like when you're good at it. She turned to me. I have to live with that. I need to know if you can. I looked at her, the lavender soap, the cataloging eyes, the blouse she'd buttoned slowly that first evening, while I stood in a doorway she'd deliberately left open, and I tried to locate the lie in my own chest. The anger was there, buried but intact, a splinter I could feel when I pressed. The love was there too, bigger, messier, wrapped around the splinter in a way that made removing either one impossible without damaging both. "I can live with it," I said. "But I need you to stop being careful with me. Stop auditing what you say. Just be the person who's bad at this, the one who burned her own case because I asked her to." Her mouth trembled, not a smile. Something more expensive than a smile. "I'm terrified," she said. "Good, so am I." She leaned into me, and I felt the weight of her, all of it. The competence and the damage and the cardamom and the crime settle against my shoulder, and for the first time in 5 months I wasn't trying to decode her. She was just there. The door wasn't locked. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not because it was a trap, though it was. Not because it changed my life, though it did. But because every real thing that happened between us, every true thing, started with a door she could have closed and chose not to. Maybe the bravest thing she ever did wasn't building the case or burning it. Maybe it was leaving the door open and trusting me to walk through it, knowing I'd eventually see everything, and choosing to be seen anyway. Have you ever realized that the person who completely upended your life, who cost you sleep, money, certainty, and the version of yourself you thought you'd be, was also the only person who ever saw you clearly enough to ask you for something real? And if you're honest with yourself right now, if you close your eyes and think of their face, do you still wish the door had been locked? Tell me in the comments. I mean it. Tell me about the door you walked through. If this one landed somewhere real, subscribe. The next story is already written, and the door in that one doesn't open. It breaks.